Mute. All right, guys, let's get the ball rolling on this. So, thank you for coming to this training. So over the last like month or so, really like 2, 3 weeks ago, I had an agent reach out to me. Hey, did you see the new condo writer? And I'm like, no, I haven't had a chance to look at it. And there's a lot of changes, and it's very important to understand what those changes are. So we're gonna do two things today. This training's not gonna take very long, guys. Probably go get through it in about half an hour, but it's really, really important stuff. So I'm gonna start it by doing like a quick little recap of the writer. So just kind of show you the changes and some things that maybe are good for you to know. And then we'll get into what the changes are, how to be knowledgeable about it so you have these conversations with the sellers that own condos that you might get a listing, and also for buyers, because buyers now might be wanting to buy condos and they're going to want to know, well, how do these new changes affect me? So I'm going to start by looking at the condo writer. Number one, whenever you're doing, some of you guys know this, some of you guys maybe if you haven't done this before, you always want to go with the one that says CR7. So when you search on Form Simplicity, you look for condo, it's always this one. There's this other one here, condo addendum. You don't use that one, you would use this one. Okay. So you click on it, it should open up. And so basically just a few sections here that are good to know. You have to check this area. This basically just says, is approval required by the condominium association, which most of the times it is. It's very rare to find an association that doesn't require approval, at least a condo association. It does exist, but again, it's very rare. So you can usually easily check this box, and then you got to check about approval. Okay, if approval is required, this contract is contingent upon buyer being approved by the association no later than, and I usually put 3 days prior to closing. It does say here at the bottom that this contract shall terminate and buyer shall be refunded the deposit if buyer is not approved within the stated time period. So like if you're about to get to your closing date and you're 2 days before the closing date, the buyer can get out of the contract. They can say, per the contract, I was not approved by 3 days prior to closing. So, I want to cancel. I usually put 3, and then for here, 5. 5 means that within 5 days they need to start that process. Usually that gives you time to do the inspection first and make sure that everything goes good with the inspection, and then you could apply to the association. So that is the reason we do that. If there's any questions, by the way, while we're kind of recapping this, let me know. Okay. So that's section 1. And then section 2 is just regarding the right of first refusal. This, again, rare. You probably see it a little more than the option 1. But the right of first refusal basically is when a buyer wants to buy a condo, the association has the right of first refusal. And when in cases when they do, you basically the condo has the right to say, no, we want to sell it to somebody else. We have the right first to match your current offer and then sell it to a particular individual that they want to sell it to. Basically, do the members or the association have that right? This is, again, it's rare. You don't run into it a lot, but you do see it. We've run into it a few times. If you're not sure of the answer to this, if you're representing a buyer putting an offer, just put that they do. It's better to put that they do, and then most likely they don't. But it's worse to put that they don't, and then it turns out that they do. So the way to find this information is ask the listing agent. The way unfortunately, a lot of times the agent doesn't know. So the best way is to ask the association directly. So you could always try to reach out to the association prior to submitting the offer and find that information out. And then here, if there is a right of first refusal, within 5 days, they need to pretty much when you apply for the association, that is essentially starting that process, and you got to give them the contract and all that stuff. Section 3, guys, very straightforward. It's just asking, is there any assessment? So here you're gonna put how much is your monthly association fee. If there is another type of assessment, you would put it here. And then you would put, is it monthly, quarterly, annually? You know, most of the times we see monthly, but sometimes you'll see quarterly. And even in some cases, you might see annually dues are due, usually in smaller associations. Um, Here in this part, a good little piece to remember, because this does come up sometimes, is this little clause here. It says seller shall at closing pay all fines imposed against the unit by the condo association as of closing day and any fees the association charges to provide information about the property assessments and fees. So essentially what that is saying is two things. If there's any code violations that have turned into fines, the contract, this is not up for negotiation, and most people don't notice this part, but the contract just says seller has to pay for it. If it also says that basically seller pays for any charges to provide information about the association. So the title company orders something called the estoppel letter, and pretty much that gives you all the financials about the association, and that is something the seller is going to pay for. Okay. Um, So just always good to know. Sometimes when there's fines, a seller tries to throw it on the buyer, but this sentence already here says that the seller has to take care of it. Here it just talks about special assessments. So the first question I typically ask a seller is like, do you know of any special assessments? Have you been attending? And when they tell you, oh, I don't know anything, and I ask, have you been attending the board meetings? And most of the times they tell me no. You don't run into a lot of sellers that participate a lot in the boards. Some do. Some are very aware and know everything about the meetings and what's going on. But in my experience, majority don't. So if they tell you that they are not aware, they also don't go to any board meetings, you really want to reach out to the association and find out if there's any pending special assessments or proposed or something coming soon. Because you have to disclose that, and the reality is that it could just ruin your deal. Once the buyer gets the estoppel letter, finds out of an upcoming special assessment, all of a sudden that wasn't disclosed. Turns out the special assessments for a ton of money, and that could put your seller in a bad situation where they might have to cover that, and that was unexpected, or it could kill your deal altogether. So make sure you find out, and if there are any, you put them here. This one's pretty straightforward. If there are any special assessments, either seller pays it in full at closing, or the buyer pays, or the seller pays anything due before closing, buyer continues paying it after closing. So that's pretty straightforward. And then here, any litigation also that the association may have, you want to disclose that here. All right, moving on. This part, the same as before. This has not changed. Pretty much you have two options here. And this has to do with receiving the condominium documents. So the condominium documents are, and it says here, the current copy of declaration of the condominium, articles of incorporation, bylaws and rules of the association, a copy of the most recent annual financial statement, or what we usually refer to as the budget. And the annual budget. So yeah, it's pretty much there. Which that part is actually new. Budget wasn't usually included in the condo docs, but now it's like specified there. So that's great. So basically, what this section says is Section A says that, hey, I've received them. So as I'm writing this offer, I've already received everything, which that's not common. Most of the times you're going to check box B. And what box B essentially says is that within 3 days of receiving the budget, the articles of incorporation, the bylaws, everything, the buyer can back out of the contract. It could be outside of your inspection period. This has nothing to do. It's just they have 3 days to review that. So that's very important. So as when you're representing a seller, you want to make sure you give this to a buyer immediately upon contract being executed so that you don't waste time. And when you're a buyer, you want to get this to them as soon as possible too when you represent the buyer, because they can back out. They can say, oh, I didn't, I didn't get into it. I didn't know that the association didn't allow dogs, or I didn't know that the association didn't allow overnight guests. I don't know, whatever it may be. They can just back out. And imagine you give this to them a week later after being on the contract, and then they decide they don't like something. That would be a waste of time. So make sure that they get those condo docs, and you request that from the listing agent. The seller has to provide it. Okay, the seller has to provide it. It says it somewhere in here that the seller has to pay for whatever cost of getting it. It does say here also, it actually says it here. If this contract does not close, buyer shall immediately return the documents to the seller or reimburse the seller for the cost. So, if for some reason the buyer does have to give that back, or give the whatever it costs, because sometimes the associations charge money to provide all those documents. The buyer has to reimburse that back to the seller. And here you're always going to request for the condo docs. So that, check this box. You're always going to want them. There's typically, you might not want them for some reason, but 99% of the time you're going to request it. This box here, you would only check if you received the documents. So at the time of writing this, if you've already received it, you can fill this out. If you haven't received it yet, you don't have to come back and do this part. But you should acknowledge via email that it was received. Okay. You as a listing agent, if you're representing the seller, you should acknowledge that. And you should ask for an email back, or even an addendum if you want to do an addendum to verify, to confirm that the buyer has received it. So we don't have any issues with that. Here, very straightforward. If there's any parking spaces that are deeded to the property, or a garage number or a parking space, you can put that here. Or any other details of parking, you could put it here. All right, so that was kind of the recap. Now let's talk about the new things that we need to talk about. So this is when you first come here and you kind of look at this whole entire new section. You get a little worried at first because you're like, what is all this? This is all brand new. So before we get into this, I want to talk about what it is. Okay, so let's talk about what these new laws are. So I'm gonna put some slides here so that we can kind of go over it, and then we're gonna go back to the writer. All right. So let's talk about the new stuff. All right. So we got some new laws that have to do with structural safety. Hold on, I'm sorry. Let me just lower, okay, cool. So new condo laws are basically the following. In Florida, older condominiums must undergo a milestone inspection and structural integrity reserve study to comply with new state laws and qualify for insurance. These requirements were implemented after the Surfside condominium collapse to ensure structural safety. So that's kind of the reason why these new laws started as of this year. So what is it that you need to know? You need to understand what the milestone inspection is, the structural integrity reserve study is, and the turnover inspection report. The turnover inspection report is essentially the same certification that has existed. So if you've done condos already, you should be familiar with the 30. Remember, it originally was a 40-year recertification that condos had to do after 40 years after being built. And now I believe it's been lowered to 30 years. And I believe some condos might also require to do it sooner in 25 years. So that's something, double check with your insurance agent. But it used to be 40, got changed to 30 about maybe 2 years ago, 2, 3 years ago. So you might, but we never called it the turnover inspection, but the condo writer calls it the turnover inspection. So we want to know what that is. So let's go into what these are so that you're educated on knowing how to, communicate, how to explain it to people, and how it works. All right, so number one, let's go into the milestone inspection. So the milestone inspection is a structural two-phase inspection for condos of 3 stories or more. Okay. This is the entire state of Florida. I want to also mention that Broward and Dade have a few differences, and we're going to get to that on the next slide. But for the whole state of Florida, generally, it's a structural two-phase inspection of condos of 3 stories or more done by either a licensed architect or engineer. And this is usually done like by the county. Okay. So it's done with the county is who oversees it. Who like that's who we need to give the report to. The condo must have a milestone inspection performed by December 31st of the year that the building reaches 30 years of age. So right away you start thinking, okay, well, how old is the building? And then you know if the milestone report is required or not. There is an exception for shorter requirement, okay? So it says here the local enforcement agency or the county may determine that local circumstances, including environmental conditions such as proximity to saltwater, as an example, require that the milestone inspection be done in 25 years instead of 30. Okay. And by the way, no matter if it's 30 or 25, it's after that, every 10 years they have to do it. Associations are required to complete milestone inspection by December 31st of 2026. So they have until next year to have this completed. So you right now, from what my experience, we're asking and nobody has it done. I mean, I haven't seen a summary of it yet. So, they have until next year to do this. If the building is 30 years or older. So I haven't seen what a summary of it looks like. I'm sure in the future we'll do an updated training on this, and maybe we can go a little deeper into that. Because if you're gonna hand a summary to a buyer, I would assume that they're gonna have questions, and these might be questions that we might probably want to refer them to an attorney for, but we have to see how that looks first. And I'm gonna go a little bit into what goes into the report. Any questions so far? All right. So next, let's forget a little bit about what I just said, because now we got to focus on Miami-Dade and Broward County because it's a little different. Okay. All right. So Miami-Dade and Broward has specific rules, okay, that are a little more stricter. So Dade and Broward have their own safety inspection that is more strict than the state requirements. It's still the milestone inspection, but it just has a little bit more stricter requirements. That's all. That we don't need to worry about that. That's, the inspector will do that. One big difference is that an electrical recertification is required as part of the milestone inspection in Miami-Dade and Broward. The rest of the state doesn't have to look into their electrical, but Miami-Dade and Broward do have to also add to the milestone inspection an electrical section that views that. The height does not matter in Miami-Dade or Broward. So if you're considered a condo, you could be a 1-story, 2-story, and you have to get this done. The rest of the state, if you're doing business in Orlando, Naples, the Keys, wherever, 3 stories or higher. Miami-Dade and Broward, the story doesn't matter how many stories. As long as you're a condo, you have to do it. Now, it does say here that the total condo has to be more than 2,000 square feet, the building, which most of the times it's going to be. So, that's very rare that you're going to find a condo building with 2,000 or square feet or less. Um, and in Broward, 3,500 square feet or less. I mean, I'm sorry, 35 square feet or more, it's required. In Dade, 2,000 square feet or more is required. Not the unit, the entire condominium building. So, you might find like what you see a lot of times is like a 4 unit little building, like a building that maybe has 4 units, and there's multiple of these units. There's multiple of these buildings in the community, and sometimes you'll see them maybe 1,200 square feet each. Okay, so that would make them 4,800 square feet total. So yes, that they have to do the milestone inspection. It's very rare that you would find a condo building with 3, 4 units, all 500 square feet or less. That's not very common. I don't think I've ever seen that. Um, Also, fee simple townhomes are included. So what I'm trying to say by that, guys, is that if I know sometimes, there's fee simple townhomes, they're attached, but they're really townhomes, meaning they have a lot and block. They're excluded, obviously. Single family homes are excluded. Twin homes are excluded. So those don't have to do it. So if you have a lot and block townhouse, it's not. However, if you have a condo, if you have you guys know the deal. Sometimes there might be a townhouse that looks like a townhouse, but it's really a condo. They fall under this requirement in Miami, Dade, and Broward. Okay. In in the rest of the state, they might not fall under this because a lot of those are usually 2-story, so they don't fall into this. But if there are 3 stories, would you see them a little more up north? They would fall into this category because they're outside of the county. They're outside of Miami-Dade and Broward County. So hopefully I'm making this clear. I think it's pretty straightforward. So that is the milestone inspection. So how does this work is you guys have to ask, and I'm gonna show you how to fill it out in the condo writer. But if you're representing a seller, you need to ask the owner about this, reach out to the association. If you're a buyer's agent, you should ask the listing agent about this, and probably also reach out to the association. Um, from my experience, also so far, a lot of agents have had no training on this. So some of the agents, I had an agent, I told them, ask the listing agent, and of course the listing agent wasn't aware. They didn't know what was going on. So I said, okay, you need to call the association, ask, because we can't rely on the listing agent at this point. Over time, guys, more people will get training on this and they'll understand it, and we'll have more cooperation in that sense. Okay. All right, so how do I get the report? So just to be clear, once this report is done, whether it's phase 1 or phase 2, the association within 45 days of receiving the report, they have to distribute a copy of the summary. So similar to regular inspection reports that we get when we do an inspection report for our clients, there's usually a summary page that just gives you the bullet points, the highlights of what's important. There's going to be a summary like that. So they're required to put it to give it to each unit owner. They must post a copy in a conspicuous place in the condo property. So most condos have like a bulletin board. They have to put it there. And if they have a website, they must put it on the website. So that'll be a great place to also get it. Quick note, currently associations with 150 or more units have to have a website. As of next year, January 1st, condominiums with 25 units or more will be required to have a website. So that's going to be pretty much majority of them. So that's another place that you can look up is where their website is, and get it. But the first place is try to ask the owner for it. Any questions about the milestone inspection? So far, so good. All right, guys, you feel free to stop me at any time. If there's something doubt, if you have any doubt about something or how it works or how this interacts or affects your client or your deal. All right, so now let's go into the structural integrity reserve study. All this is essentially is a study of how the what reserves you need to have to deal with structural repairs to the condominium. So associations must have reserve study done by December 31st, 2024. So this should have already been done for each building in the condominium property that is 3 stories or higher. A quick little note, if the association was not collecting reserves last year, then they have until the end of this year to do this. So that's kind of the thing. So it is technically due last year if you were already collecting reserves. So if you're one of these buildings, you weren't collecting at all reserves, then they're gonna tell you, okay, we'll just start. You got to do it by the end of 2025. All right. So what is this structure integrity reserve study? Uh, it basically it's you have to look at the components of your property to make sure that everything is funded. Unless like everything is basically like all your components are funded. So let's go over them. So roof, structural things including load bearing walls and other primary structural systems, fireproofing and fire protection systems, plumbing, electrical, waterproofing, exterior paint, windows, exterior doors, any other item that has a deferred maintenance or replacement cost that exceeds $10,000. That could be a pool, that could be a clubhouse, that could be different things. So the SIRS report is basically like you need to make sure how much all these things are going to cost. Where are they in their maintenance cycle? When is it expected that some of these things are going to need to be due? And you need to start collecting reserves as of this year. So what's going to happen is that when people do this study and they realize they need to do money and the law says they need to, they need to have these reserves, it's going to lead to special assessments across the board. So a lot of condos, you're already starting to see it. You're already starting to see this. A lot of condos are getting special reserves. I'm sorry, special assessments. A lot of condos are doing special assessments to collect reserves and make sure that they are in compliance with the law. What happens if they don't do this? I'm not sure. That'll be a question for an attorney. If an association does not comply with this, but essentially it looks like it probably be it might not be very well managed and your buyer might hesitate to purchase there. Okay. But that is the structural reserve study. Any questions? My bad. I think I see. I don't know why I can't see the chat. Can anybody see the chat? Oh, wait. I see it now. Oh, oh, there'll be 2 associations, one being the master association. Okay, cool. Apparently, oh, okay. All right, guys. So where do you get this report? Same thing as the milestone report. Ask the owner. Same rules. Within 45 days of it being done, they have to give it to the owners. Okay. And if association did not collect in reserves in 2024, they don't have to do it until the end of this year. All right. All right. So next, the turnover inspection report. This one is the same one that's always existed. This is not new. This has happened. It's the 40-year recertification. It's required for condos that are 30 years or older, sometimes 25, and then it has to be done every 10 years. It's done by a licensed engineer or architect, and it covers it's a structural inspection, and this has always been required for insurance. The reason sometimes you see these buildings redoing their balconies, redoing windows, redoing such things like that is because they didn't pass this and they now have to do these repairs to be up to code because these buildings maybe they were built 30 years ago and they weren't up to code. Um, and uh, and yeah, and basically it's required for them to get insurance. I want to be also a good question is what's the difference? So why is there a milestone and why is there the 30-year recertification? What's the difference? Essentially, the milestone, they're very similar, but the milestone report is more emphasized uh in structural components and structural integrity, while the turnover inspection is more comprehensive. It covers everything. It's kind of the same thing as your regular inspection report and your wind mitigation. So your regular inspection report covers everything, including your roof and windows, but the wind mitigation report focuses solely on the roof and wind mitigation. So it's kind of the same thing. So this one covers, it's more comprehensive, covers a lot of aspects, while the milestone mostly focuses on structural integrity. Sorry, I had that slide twice. So that's it. That's pretty much what those reports are, what you need to know about them. So let's go back here, okay? And then these are the sections you have to check. So it's 10 it's 3 options, okay? It's gonna say your milestone inspection, your turnover inspection, and the structural integrity reserve. And you have 3 options to check in each one. It says the association is required to have completed it and has completed it. So you would check this, which that's not what we're seeing a lot right now. The association is not required to have complete this, or they are required, but they have not completed it. So when you're in doubt, just check the third option on all of these, because it's better to say it's required and it hasn't been done than to say it has been done or to say that it's not required. So anytime you see a 30-year-old building or more and you ask the realtor and they're not sure, and the association maybe also doesn't give you clear communication, just check this third box. Now the association should let you know, hey, yes, it is required, however we haven't completed it. Or they might tell you it's not, we're not required. Or they might tell you, hey, yeah, we've already completed it, which in this case you would check the first option. So that's all this is, guys. It's very straightforward. Your milestone, the turnover inspection, remember that's the usual 30-year recertification that we've always had, that the buildings require for insurance. And then the reserve study, it's just a study of the reserves. Was it done? What are the results of it? And so you have 3 options. Now, then we've had this final section, okay? Very similar to the section earlier about condo docs. Either you've received the reports and you're great, or this agreement is voidable by written notice within 3 days of the buyer receiving these reports. So I'm assuming most of the times, just like with the other things, you're going to check this box because you're submitting the offer. They're probably not going to give you these reports yet unless you pull them up on the association's website. And this way you'll have you'll know that you already have the documents, and then you can check this box. But that's might not be the most common. This is probably gonna be the most common. When you'll submit your offer, after the offer is accepted, now not only will the listing agent provide you with the condo documents, bylaws, rules, budget, now they also have to provide you with the milestone report, the reserve study, and the turnover report. And again, I keep reiterating so we don't get confused. The turnover report is the 40-year recertification. All right. And that's it. That's the section. So I wanted to not just explain what it is, what you check, but like I wanted to give you guys some details and understanding of what this is, because buyers and sellers are going to have questions on these things. They're going to want to know, well, what exactly is it? What does it entail? What are the risks? In the future, when I see a summary of it, whenever that time comes, we'll probably share that and like show you, hey, this is what to look out for. This is what it looks like. This is what it shows, and how to determine, what's good for your client or not. But that's it, guys. I told you this is gonna be a quick one today. Just quick one, but super, super important. Any questions, anything at all? David, Helen, I know Priscilla. I know there's somebody in here. I can't tell who it is. I think Cassandra was on, but she's not on. Any questions, anything at all? Pretty straightforward or easy stuff? All right, guys.
I think it's good. It's a lot of reports, but it's for the
Yeah.
better. For sure.
Yeah, this is all for the better. It's more information, it's more detailed. So ultimately it's gonna be for the best thing. It's not good for condo sellers because I think it's gonna add special assessments. It's gonna
Mhm.
be more reports, more things buyers are gonna be aware of. Like most buyers now, when they buy a condo, they never even think about the structural integrity of the building, unless visibly they can see something weird. But if if visibly there's nothing to be concerned about, they never ever think about this. But now it'll just be part of the sale, part of the transaction. All right. So it's no different than it's basically like doing an inspection report, but it's going to be an inspection report on the building itself. So pretty straightforward, guys. Be prepared, be ready for when the time comes for this. So why do you want to why is that? And I put that your deal can fall apart, guys. If you check the wrong box here, it's grounds for the buyer to void the contract. The contract is void because it wasn't filled out correctly. So this is not a situation where, oh, you know, so if you're representing a seller and the buyer's past their inspection period, they're trying to figure out a way to get out. Right away, I'm looking at this section. Was this filled out correctly? And if it was not filled out correctly, the contract can be void. So you got to fill these things out correctly. It's very, very important. So that's pretty much it, guys. That's pretty much it. Thanks you for coming by. And we'll continue doing trainings, guys. We have a lot of good trainings coming up over the next few weeks. Follow a boss, fellow, some things on buyer lead generation. I'm doing a training on real estate tax strategies. So like a lot of times investors want to know like what are the things like when you're speaking to an investor or even a buyer like that's buying a house for their home, there are tax deductions that they can take advantage of. But the training is going to be mostly focused on, strategies that investors, because they're the ones that have a lot more options. So it's not going to be necessarily just the usual 1031 exchange and things like that. It's going to be a lot of good information and some things that you might not be aware of that are great to know when you're an investor when it comes to paying less taxes. So that'll help you for you guys that invest, and that'll help you and you providing more value to your clients. And I always tell people like, don't give tax advice. So we can give general advice, but talk to your accountant to confirm, because you never know, certain people's tax situations might vary. All right, guys. So that was it. That's what I got for you today. Helen, David, thank you for showing up. I don't know who the other phone is. There's no name, but I appreciate you showing, and hopefully this will
It's
help. All right.
Juju.
Who is it?
Juju.
Oh, what's up, Juju? I didn't hear it. I see. I saw you earlier on there, but they had your name earlier. All right, guys. So any questions, anything at all, feel free to reach out to me anytime. I'm always here for support, whatever you need. All right. If I don't see you again, Juju, have a fun trip. Oh yeah, I'm gonna see you because I think I'm dropping you guys at the airport. So yeah, I'm gonna see you.
Oh my God. All righty.
All right, guys. Take care. Bye.